Hello, my name is Liza Maria, and today I'm glad to have on my podcast Dr. Eiman, which is the second MoonDAO astronaut to get a chance to fly in space. And he's also a cardiologist. Hello, Eiman. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me here and excited to talk to you about space.
That's great. So to start this podcast, the first question is, can you tell us more about you, like your career working with space and your career as a cardiologist doctor?
Yeah, so, I grew up always interested in space, but reality of life set in. And the other thing I was passionate about was becoming a doctor. And I saw a much clearer path of becoming a doctor. So I pursued that, kind of knowing in high school that's what I wanted to do. Took a lot of science courses, went to college, university with that as my goal, and worked hard towards it in an effort to get to where I needed to get. Got into medical school. And started medical school, which was great. That was, one lifelong dream. And as I was kind of getting through medical school near the end, I realized, oh, wait, I also want to do this space thing, like whatever happened to that dream. And so I started looking into NASA and seeing what you need to do to become an astronaut, because at that time, really the only way to become an astronaut was either through NASA or the Russian cosmonauts. They're really European Space Agency too, I guess. And lo and behold, by becoming a physician, I had met the qualifications to become an astronaut without even, planning it, which was pretty cool. So at that point, I was 25. I started working to try to become an astronaut also, along with being a physician. As far as being a physician, I think it's great. I think it's a great job. Anyone who wants to do it, it's a good profession. I'm a cardiologist, so I take care of people with heart disease, and specifically, I take care of oncologic patients, so patients with cancer, who have side effects from their chemotherapy or their radiation that are affecting the heart. So it's like super subspecialty group of cardiology, but it's exciting because you get to help people who are already dealing with a lot of stress, dealing with cancer, and help them get through their heart stuff. As far as space, as soon as I realized I could become an astronaut by NASA standards, I started applying. Every time it came around, I was a finalist in 2009 and 2013, which was pretty cool because you get to go down to Houston, interview down there, live on, the Space Center down there, and interview with astronauts. So even if, when I didn't get picked, it was still like being in an amazing adult space camp where you got to meet all these cool astronauts and see how they train and do a lot of like the tests and things like that.
That's awesome. And the next question here is, so as a MoonDAO second astronaut, and to get this opportunity to fly in space, and you're gonna see the Earth from space, which is like awesome. How your interest for space travel started, or what made you be a space enthusiast?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 80s when the space shuttle was in full effect. So it really was a different era where we thought anything was possible. They were sending up shuttles pretty frequently. They were doing missions in space. They were picking these huge classes of astronauts, 20 people at a time sometimes. And I was lucky because I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and only 2 hours away is the Huntsville Space Center. And if you know much about the Space Centers, Huntsville is where they have Space Camp. So we would go down there as a family just to see the rockets and explore the Space Center. And I always saw that there was this thing called Space Camp, which I unfortunately was never able to attend for various reasons. But just being close to the rockets and seeing them in person was enough to get me enthusiastic about like, wow, like look what humans are doing. We're sending people to space. And back then we thought we were going to be, much further along than we are now. We thought, the shuttle would progress and maybe we'd get people to the moon and things like that by now. And it was just that excitement and enthusiasm, I think, both of like the shuttle program, being a kid, and then also being able to physically see rockets at the Space Center, which was pretty incredible.
That's great because space, in my opinion, is awesome. And I'm sure we need more people to be into space and like all these things with space. And I saw on your posts on social media that you also train a lot and for all this space work. So how much did you train to get to this point to fly in space in the near future with as a second MoonDAO astronaut?
Yeah, so when NASA didn't pick me up, when I applied, I realized, okay, what can I do to make myself more experienced and more prepared, so that if the opportunity does arise, I can do this. So now, fortunately, there are a lot of groups doing this. One of the groups is the IIAS, which is the International Institute of Astronautical Sciences. They're based out of Florida, and they do trainings in things like suborbital flights, science in suborbital flights, high G and low G training, hypoxic training. So they have a wide gambit. They also do a space medicine course. They do a course on extravehicular activity. So like what it's like to get in a spaceship and splash down and get out. They have, also parabolic flights. So a wide gambit of things. So I attended a few courses there, particularly of those things that I'm interested in, like life support systems, space physiology, things that relate to the human body. I also have gotten involved in the analog astronaut community, which for anyone who doesn't know what analog astronauts do, is they try to take the science that we need to live on the moon or Mars and bring it here on Earth and do it here first. And that could be things like, how do you eat? Dr. Sian Proctor did a 6-month analog where she worked on like what foods would astronauts eat. It could be things on behavioral health, like psychology. I did a research here at Biosphere 2, that's what you see back here, in Oracle, Arizona. And we were looking at how an artificial intelligent robot seal might help with people's stress levels if they're in a confined space for long periods of time. So I got involved in the analog astronaut community. I went and did a mission with them and served as the medical officer. So I think that was helpful. I also did a lot of things that you often hear about, things like scuba diving and becoming certified in scuba diving. A lot of people will go and get pilot's licenses, which I haven't done, though I've flown planes, just not independently. And really, I said, okay, we need to make sure that I'm prepared so that when the opportunity arises, that makes me stand out more than someone else who maybe hasn't done this training. And so that's why I pursued it and why I think it's been valuable.
And was the training hard to train to be an astronaut and to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that you love and you want to pursue is probably going to be hard, because the easy stuff the easy stuff you can just do, right? But the things that take vision and take people to form some sort of action plan, right? These are the steps to get there, are always going to be hard. But that shouldn't stop you from doing it. So I would say some of the training was hard. But when you're following your passion, it never really feels hard. And I think that's really part of it, is even on those times where the training is very difficult or trying, as long as you know why you're doing it and what the end goal is, it helps you kind of persevere and get through that.
That's great. So the next question is, are you going to do any experiments in space if you have the time?
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to get on a call next week with some people to discuss what potential experiments we can do. Obviously, it's a suborbital flight, so it's relatively short, and that limits some of the things we can do. But we're trying to figure out something meaningful to do, preferably with like humans, so like space physiology. Maybe it's wearing a monitor, maybe it's checking your glucose before and after and seeing if the stress of space flights change that. But for anything we do, we're going to have to get approval from Blue Origin. So we need to come up with a proposal, which is what we're working on now, and then submit it to Blue Origin and see what they think. Other groups like the IIAS, you might have seen, they just announced a flight on Virgin Galactic when the Delta is built. They have done a lot of research on fluid mechanics. And so that's like looking how microgravity affects fluids. I don't know if we'll be doing any of that, but we're going to discuss it this week and see what makes sense.
Yes, and I'm sure if you guys have the time when you go in space with your crew probably, and if you have that time, I'm sure that's gonna work and that's gonna be cool. So
I would love to do a orbital flight for 3 or 5 days, and then you can really get a lot of research done,
yes,
because you can dedicate the time. You're up there for a few days, and as we just saw, there was a lot of science that came out 2 weeks ago from the Inspiration 4 crew. That was the first all commercial crew that went up about 2 years ago. That it actually, even a short 3-day stay in space, changed their genomics, changed their body's ability to adapt to stress. So there are real changes that occur fairly quickly when you go into microgravity.
yes, and that's really cool in my opinion. So What else do you do in your free time other than space? Do you have any passions?
I have a few passions. Obviously, my family. I have two young kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old. So most of my day consists of work and then being with my family. But outside of that, I like to work out. So I make it, a goal that every day I either am doing some sort of resistance training, so lifting weights, push-ups, pull-ups, or rucking, which what rucking is, it's like walking with weight on your back. So it makes it a little harder. Because as a cardiologist and a doctor, the thing that I think is the most important and what I tell my patients all the time is you have to stay active. By staying active and doing physical activity, that's what keeps you young and healthy so that you can do whatever you want as you get older. The other thing I do is I play bass and banjo, so I like to play music. I would not say I'm by any means even an advanced player. Maybe I'm like beginner intermediate, but it's a passion I have, and it's something I try to do at least 10 to 20 minutes a night when everyone goes to bed.
That's awesome. And what's your favorite part from working in this space industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most exciting part about the space industry is the people you meet. Uh, Traditionally, for people who are engineers, there's always a lot of stigma that it's what we would call a boys' club. So a lot of people, there were not a lot of women in this industry, 20, 30 years ago. I think, and I hope that that's changing. I think that, you see more and more, particularly on the internet, that there are more women going into these fields, which I think is what we need and which is what's great. Now, outside of like working for a company, because I don't work for Boeing or anyone like that, I would say that the people I've met that are space enthusiasts, people like you, people like Siam Proctor, people like Titan with the I-24, Andrew Paris, there's a large group of people you meet, and everyone in this community seems to be very welcoming and open and hopeful that the future of space is going to be open to all of us. That's really the goal, is that hopefully in the next 10 to 20 years, particularly with Starship, SpaceX new big super heavy that's had 3 successful flights now, and hopefully in the next 5 years we'll start taking humans to space, that it's going to get much cheaper and much more realistic to send more and more people to space so that they can work in space, do art in space, and experience space. And I think that those people are what makes the industry the greatest, is just the people you're going to meet.
Yes, because I'm also an Inspire 24 member, and meeting new people is always really cool. And Inspire 24 and other space groups are always really welcoming, and as a member, as the newest member, it's great, to be honest. So the next question is, when you were a kid, you had any shows or something that made you like space?
Yeah, so I am a huge Star Trek fan. I know some people are huge Star Wars fans. I like Star Wars, but Star Trek: The Next Generation was a show that I would watch with my cousin, Layla, who's only 1 year younger than me, and her and I would watch it all the time. So for those of you who don't know, The Next Generation was the one with Captain Luke Picard, with Data, with James, what's his name? The guy from Reading Rainbow, James Burton, I think. And to me, it was amazing. It was like the greatest show ever. Humans are out there exploring, encountering new species of aliens, and having to figure out the same conflicts and same issues with other species that they have here on Earth, right? That it didn't change. The dynamics don't change, even if you're from another planet. It's the same issues.
And right now, do you have a favorite show or maybe a documentary you like about space?
I mean, I think from a fictional show, Mankind, which is on Apple TV, has been incredible. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch that, but it's the idea of what if the Russians had landed on the moon first, and how that would have changed the whole space program and the funding going forward. This last season, they were on Mars. So, and I think it's in the current time frame. So it's like by now we would be on Mars, which is pretty incredible. It's a nice idea to think about that. The other show I think was pretty awesome, was the what show was it that I was just watching? I mean, Battlestar Galactica obviously is an amazing one. That's a big sci-fi one from a while back. And The Expanse, I think, was the one I watched maybe 2, 3 years ago. And I thought The Expanse was really good because they did a lot of science that was more realistic for living in space. Like, what would you do if someone, needs surgery in space? How does the healing process occur? Things like that. So there's lots of great shows. Documentary wise, I don't know if I have a favorite one most recently. I know a few have come out, but I'm a big sci-fi fantasy guy, so I think I tend to go to the ones with the stories and the sci-fi aspect.
That's awesome. And as a MoonDAO member and a MoonDAO astronaut, how do you see other organizations like MoonDAO contributing in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, we still know that space is very expensive, right? So to send someone, like to send me to space, is not cheap for a company to do. So I know why there are so few people doing it. There's MoonDAO, there's Space for Humanity has done it, and I think CERO, which was formerly known as the Crypto Space Agency, has sent one person to space. So if it's too expensive to send people to space, it's like, then what can we do? And I think part of it is what MoonDAO is doing, which is the mission to bring space-related projects and fund them, whether it's science. Right now, they're working on maybe ideas for a lunar clock, which is something that NASA and the U.S. government are interested in. If it's starting organizations that get people excited about doing, STEM research or getting involved in STEM fields like yourself, so as you go from high school to university, that you are in the aerospace or the science realm. I think anything that encourages and grows and is able to fund people to do science and get it enthusiastic is very real, because that way you spend less money to impact more people. And let's say you impact 100 people and 10 of them go into this field. Well, you've made a pretty big impression kind of on the industry and people's lives in that case.
And the last question here is, what are you going to bring to space?
Yeah, so we definitely get the ability to bring some stuff up. I have a few ideas. I'm obviously going to bring a MoonDAO flag because, they're my sponsor and they're supporting me. I would like to bring something from each of the universities I've attended and my high school so that I could take it up and then bring it back and give it to them as kind of like, thank you for being part of my education and my road to here. I'm going to bring some artwork from friends. So I've asked Dr. Sian Proctor to give me some artwork to take up. I'm also going to ask some of my cousins, one of my cousins is an artist and one of my good friends is an artist, and give that back to them so that they can have a piece of this journey with them. Beyond that, I think maybe some pictures of family and friends that we can kind of have going forward. Like, look, we went to space. We did it. So here I am representing our family and our group and our community. So really, it's not so much what I take to space because I'm going to space. I think that's my experience. It's what can I do to kind of bring my community along with me.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Eiman, for joining me today on my podcast, and especially that you're the second MoonDAO astronaut to get a chance to fly in space. So it was great having you today on my podcast, and thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing what you do in your future.
Thank you.